This is the Lamborghini Aventador SVJ. Now, if you know your Lambos, you'll know that J denotes the most extreme one. Always has done, always will do, I suspect. Today I learned something interesting, and that is what J stands for. J stands for Jota, you probably know. But it was first worn by the Miura back in the 1960s, and the reason it's called the J is when they wanted to turn it from a road car into a track car, the appendix they had to fill in was Appendix J, and in Italian, J stands for Jota. Jota, I think in Italian. Don't know my Italian very much. Anyway, let's have a look at this. Now, what I have here is the cheat sheet, because I've been talked through it. There's quite a lot to get through, bit of complication. But this is what I particularly like. If you look in here, look, they've covered up some of the pictures here, so you can't see what's going on with the aerodynamics. We'll come on to that in a second. Let's talk about the engine first, which obviously sits in the middle of the car back here and is still a massive 6.5 litre V12, naturally aspirated, power to all four wheels through the sequential manual gearbox, not a twin clutch. It is, if this car has a weak link, because I've been driving it today, it's still the gearbox. It's better than it was, still not brilliant. Anyway, what we have here is 770 naturally aspirated horsepower going to all four wheels. It's not a slow car. It won't surprise you to learn in the least. Now, the old SV, there was one thing, it wasn't the best to drive, and one of the reasons for that was that it didn't have enough front end on it. It didn't quite bite into corners properly. A major part of that was the fact that it only had about 20% of its downforce on the front axle and about 80% on the back. That has now changed, because what we have down here is a new ala system. We have an ala system, just like the Huracan Performante, at the front and at the back. Now, this one can develop a maximum of about 190 kilos of downforce on the front end. And at VMAX, I think they said the rear develops about 300 kilos. So it's much better balance. It's about 60% on the back and 40% on the front. Now, that has enabled them to stiffen up the front suspension and so on. So the car comes across as much more balanced. I think the front anti-roll bar, 50% stiffer, and the damper rate has gone up by 15%. So anyway, the little ala slots open and close, and they bleed the air on and off as it comes over the front, and then you can increase and decrease the downforce accordingly. You increase it obviously through high-speed corners, and you decrease it when you're accelerating. Same on the back. I love this. Look at the size of the scoop you've got now for the rear ala system. So in there are two motorized ducts which channel the air out both sides, so that when you're going around corners, you can keep downforce on one side and bleed it off on the other. So you can keep the weight balanced on the inside, so you've got the downforce still more on the inside than the outside. New tyres, Trofeo R tyres, which were developed specifically for this car, and one of the things they really needed for them was stiffer sidewalls to support the car. I'm not surprised. We're at Vallelunga. Out there, the track temperature at the track was 62 degrees. It's 40 degrees ambient in the atmosphere, 62 degrees it's been hitting out there. And they've rebalanced the steering torque, they've improved the steering precision, they've got rear steering, that's new for this. Huracan Performante has rear steering. It's a first for the Aventador. Then we've got LDVA, that's lateral and longitudinal dynamics. 40% more downforce than an SV, and yet less drag, 1% less drag. But if you come around the back and just look at how many slats and scoops there are, I mean, I know it's camouflaged at the moment, but there's all sorts of aero outlets and channels and things going on. It's quite trick. So what's it been like on track compared with the standard SV? So they've had us driving both of them today, and the standard SV, the main difference, the big difference is confidence. You get in this car, and from the moment you get out of the pit lane, the extra positivity on the steering and the absolutely really quite remarkable trust you have in the front end compared with the SV is really impressive. This thing bites into corners in a way that, for me, I don't think a Lamborghini ever has before. That is really encouraging. So it's quite a dramatic to drive, and it's just how the systems all work together far better than they have before. It feels a much more cohesive car. Deeply fast, but now the power isn't quite so alarming. You can use all 770 brake and get away with it most of the time. So it's still camouflaged at the moment. They're not taking the wraps off it yet. All they're saying is how fast it's going around the Nürburgring and have let us have a very early go in it, which is quite exciting. You'll get to see what this looks like after Pebble Beach, 23rd of August. That's the date you need to keep an eye on.